Hey everybody, Mark Swets, Executive Director of NPTA here at headquarters with Cory Turner, President, Spicers Canada, and NPTA's 2025 Chair. Welcome, Cory.
Well, thanks, Mark. Would appreciate you guys taking the time to be with me and really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Sure. Thanks for being here. So as your NPTA chairmanship winds down, what sticks in your mind, Cory, about the experience and NPTA as an association?
Well, look, first off, it was a real privilege to be in this role. I certainly really appreciated the opportunity. I'd served on the board for a number of years, but the opportunity to chair it this year was something I took serious, but also gave me a good opportunity to reflect on it, and certainly was really proud to have the opportunity. I've had, as you and I have talked about over the years, I've had a 30-year relationship with NPTA that's gone back to my early days of a sales rep that didn't know as much as maybe I do today, or maybe knew just as much. I'm not so sure, but it was some early training I had. I experienced some training all the way back to 1997, and so there was all these touch points along the way. And for me to have an opportunity to get into a leadership role within the organization and contribute was something I took serious and something that I was really, really happy to do. We have a terrific board. We have a really wonderful cross section of our industry. We have good representation from manufacturing and distributors, and they took equally the responsibility very, very serious. And I can assure people that the board is very, very committed. They're very engaged. The conversations are lively. They're productive. And from that perspective, I think the last year has been incredibly rewarding to be in this position of being the chair. So. I would say NPTA has a real place in our industry, and what I saw through the last year was just a validation of that. Times can be challenging, but NPTA to me ultimately has been this ultimate connector for our industry and allows us to really network in a meaningful way.
Yeah, thanks. And it's a bit of a blur, I think, when you're going through the year, and we do this every year. Get to the end of the year and you start doing some reflecting on, what took place, and there's a lot that we accomplished at NPTA, and certainly the board's focused over the past year was the creation and adoption of a new strategic plan. So can you talk about the plan a little bit more and why it's important for NPTA's members?
Yeah, that in particular has just been really rewarding to work through. And we hadn't done an update to the strategic plan in a number of years. And in looking back at the plan that was there in place before, it certainly was in need of an update. As we listen to members, we often get pulled in different directions, and the question becomes, what is NPTA there for? Is it to network? Is it for education? Is it advocacy? Is it information? Is it reporting? What is the role of the organization? But after reflecting on it, it became very clear that there's two things that NPTA and its members are very, very good at, which is one is networking. The events that we have, whether it's PDC in January or Paper Meets in September, soon to be a little earlier in the year, or whether it's the educational components of it, whether that's our participation in UID, the almost 24, maybe a little bit more than that now, people that are in emerging leaders for development, whether it's the Business Management Academy. These are all opportunities that we have for either networking or education. And so, what came out of our discussions was really an emphasis on that and how we could do those things better. And so the conversations became, okay, how do we build on PDC and Paper Meets in a way where is there room for another event that we can bring people together in terms of building on the education that's available to us, which is really primarily focused on leadership and sales. How do we introduce opportunities for other functions of the business, finance and marketing, things like our IT function? How do we create opportunities that components of our business can network no differently than we do on our sales and marketing and our leadership compliance? So, the process was terrific. It was led very well, and what ended up happening through that is we really just fell out on these two components: education, networking. We have got this great foundation that already sits there and already exists. How do we build on that? And I think we're going to do a very, very good job as an organization on building on a very strong platform to bring strength to both of those.
Yeah, I'm excited. And when you think about associations, I mean, most of them are focused in some way, shape, or form on education and networking. That's kind of the foundation of a lot of associations. I think what makes NPTA different is the audience, like who is part of the organization. And I would argue that we have the brightest minds of the paper industry that are part of NPTA, and to align yourselves with that group has immense value. So
Yep.
uh,
And we have great momentum. We had more people at the PDC event than we've had in a number of years. We had great representation from emerging leaders. That was terrific. Paper Meets had the most people attend in a number of years. So the momentum is there. People are valuing these opportunities to network. The contingent that participated in the different educational components is very strong. So we have this bedrock that's very, very strong to build upon. I think by just pressing on and flexing a little bit in that space, I think we're going to do an even better job.
sure. You said it twice, Cory. This word, I think, is going to be the word of the year for NPTA in 2026, and that's momentum. I think we laid the groundwork this year through the strategic planning process of what we want to accomplish, and now we're going to go to work and make it happen. So it's an exciting time.
It is indeed.
I'm going to change gears a little bit. Cory, you've served on a number of nonprofit boards over the years, both in the industry and outside of the industry. So what do you get out of this experience?
Well, you get a little older and you start to reflect a little bit, and you start to reflect on things that have been good to you. And this industry has been incredibly good to me. I mean, I started in this 1994. I'm in my 31st year. To think that I would be where I am, and that's not the position, but to be fortunate to be in an industry that, in my opinion, is still thriving, to work for a wonderful organization. I couldn't be more grateful. And as part of that, you realize as you get a little older that you have an opportunity and an obligation to give back. And I've been fortunate to participate in not just NPTA, but I was involved with print scholarships, which was in Canada, which was another meaningful organization that did some really good work. So I think for me, it's just this opportunity to positively influence and give back to something that's just been incredibly wonderful for me. I'm very fortunate that I left university, I got into this industry, and I never worked anywhere else. And that's a real benefit that I take very, very seriously. On top of that, I've had a very personal thing, which is, as you're aware, I've had MS for 20 years. And similarly to the professional component, I've had this opportunity to give back on the personal side. And I've lived a very fortunate journey, and there's a lot of people that have MS that are not as fortunate, and I feel it's a very serious obligation for me to make sure that I'm doing good work for others that maybe are not in the same position to give back in the same way. And so I've been very involved in that. I've been involved not just in Canada but internationally. I've been involved in a lot of different ways that I know is really benefiting the people that are affected by MS. And so that for me to be in a position to not only run the company I run and participate in that way, but to also give back in a professional and a personal way, that's a balance that I'm really happy that I've been able to get to. I'm still young enough that there's still good work to be done on all three fronts. But to be in that direction and be able to contribute in those three different ways, I think it's something that I'm really happy about.
Yeah, well, you're certainly an inspiration to me, and I'm grateful for the time that I get to work with you as a volunteer leader of NPTA and the paper industry. So thank you.
That. Thank you. Right.
Now let's talk about disruptions, because that maybe was the word of the year this year in 2025, but certainly the industry was impacted by so many disruptions. Which one was most surprising to you, and which one do you think will have the most impact in the long term?
In January, I said, this is going to be wonderful. We've got for the first time an unencumbered landscape, an unencumbered year where we can actually focus on what we're paid to do, which is the business. And we went through the disruption of 20 and 21 and COVID and what that was, and then we had supply chain challenges after that. And I looked at 25 and I said to many people around me, I said, oh, for the first time we get to actually do our jobs and do it the way we want to do it. And then I think to answer your question specifically, in the first quarter of the year, we had to understand tariffs, that we had to understand international trade. And it's not my job to debate the merits of all that. I think we just have an opportunity as an industry to respond to that. And so certainly that was not something that was on my quote unquote bingo card at the beginning of the year. That wasn't there. But not just our company, but a lot of companies, I think, look at it as an opportunity, and certainly looked at it as an opportunity to restate our value. For us as a Canadian company, we have a very broad and diverse set of suppliers that support our great partnerships, and our ability to tap into that and explain that time and time again, that as a distributor, we have a really good advantage to our partners, and that is that we have all these choices and all this flexibility that sits within our inventory portfolio. And so I think while the tariffs were something that was not expected, it did create this opportunity for us to restate our value, and I think that's terrific. But we're not done. There's more disruption to happen, and there's more things that we have to get better at. We're dealing with regulation, whether that's EUDR, or we're dealing with EPR and how that extends through the different states. And in Canada, it's certainly a portion of what we do up there. We have to get good at understanding some of these complexities. And while these complexities sometimes can be unexpected and sometimes can be frustrating, the reality is if you look at them the right way, they can be opportunities as well. And so I think while disruption is maybe something that's looked at negatively, I think if we look at it with a little bit more of a glass half full look, we could probably look at these as opportunities. And certainly by being part of NPTA, you get this great perspective because you're at these events and you get great opportunities to talk about the issues of today and learn from each other. And you learn how to respond to these in a way that's meaningful to our partners, whether it's our suppliers or our customers, and of course, most importantly, to our employees as well. So while there are disruptions, yes, I think with the right approach, you can see these as opportunities. But certainly, yes, a year of disruptions, no question about it. And I think we can expect in 2026 there'll be things that we don't expect as well. So, but if anything, we're developing some good muscle memory around these things. We're developing a level of resilience, and I think that we're as prepared as ever as an industry to deal with these disruptions as they come.
Yeah, I think there was a degree of resourcefulness that was required this year that maybe hasn't come into play for a long time. So
For sure.
it's all part of the game. And, talking about disruptions, obviously the value of NPTA, being part of the conversation and having a seat at the table and talking about the issues of today and how to address them collectively is a big part of what we offer at NPTA. And I would just give a quick plug that conversation will continue next month at PDC. We'll be addressing a couple of big disruptions head on with topics on AI and then extended producer responsibility. So you're right. It certainly doesn't end, even though we get to the end of the calendar and flip it over, it just continues on. But we will continue to address those issues as they come up. So thinking about next year, Cory, what issues do you think will matter most to NPTA members in 2026?
I wish I had a crystal ball, and I wish I could tell you the things that are going to be new. But I think, building on my last conversation, I think we can expect things that we don't foresee right now, and that's okay. I think the issues that will sit with us will definitely be around regulation. We'll have to understand that a little bit better as that gets extended and has an impact potentially on our industry. EPR is probably the best example of that, as that maybe moves from state to state to state and understanding the impact that may have. But I'm less focused on the issues themselves, and I'm much more focused on the skills we're developing to tackle them. And I think that that's really important. We are, as an industry, we are proving far more flexible, far more adaptable, far more resilient, and far more creative than we ever were, say pre-2020, right? Because that's when some major disruptions happen. I think as an industry, we're trying to build on those great skills in very meaningful ways. And so while the issues will come at us, and yes, they will be profound, I think it's much more beneficial to focus on how we're going to tackle the issues, because I think that's probably the benefit that's going to be there for us as an organization more than anything, or as an industry more than anything. So to answer it specifically, Mark, yeah, the issues of today will be there tomorrow. They'll be there. And I think it's just a matter of being prepared for new ones that are going to come our way as well.
Yeah. I'd say your crystal ball is calibrated pretty good.
We like to claim the things we're right at, and the ones that we're wrong at, we forget about. Maybe that's good skill as well.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Anything else you want to add as we kind of wind down the year and get geared up for 26?
I think we should all be optimistic and look at 26 as something that's going to be, good for our industry. I certainly look at the last 5 years in particular, and I couldn't be more proud to be part of it. I'd like to just say at the end just how appreciative I was for the opportunity to sit as the chair of NPTA. As I mentioned in the beginning, I've had this very long relationship with NPTA, and if anything, it just validated how important it's been in my career and how much it's added, it valued along the way, whether it's training or the network. And I think for us to fall out at the end as these two pillars that the organization is going to build from, that just feels right to me. That feels very personal, because having been in it for 30 years and having had this relationship for this long, I certainly can vouch for the value that we've had with this relationship between myself and NPTA. And so I'm excited that there's 25 to 30 emerging leaders that are at different points in their own evolution, and I think they will similarly, whether it's 5 years from now, or 10 years, or 15 years from now, look back and say, man, MPTA played a pretty important part of my career as well. So I'm just more appreciative and grateful. I'm really appreciative for the board that we had. Has just been really doing some really terrific work. So I want to thank them as well. And I'm not done yet. I'm a young guy still, and I look to contribute and be a part of the solution as opposed to being part of the problem. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Cory. And thank you for the time that you've committed to NPTA over the years, and your membership and being involved. And certainly have enjoyed working alongside you as chair and the rest of the board this year. And we've laid important groundwork for years to come. So you were a big part of that, and we appreciate your support.
Mark, you and I have been good partners through last year, so I appreciate you as well. So thank you very much.
Well, I hope you take some time at the end of the year and wind down and maybe catch a couple of concerts. But we'll bring it back up in January.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks very much, Mark. Happy holidays to you. Appreciate it.
Same to you, Cory.
Okay, bye-bye.